It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All the sports news you need every day in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On today on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosier. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosier. Landon, our co-host, is off for the rest of this week. He is on vacation. He will be back next week, but we've got a great guest to replace him, a friend of the show. And actually, a friend of the show isn't strong enough because Joey is one of the greatest follows on Cowboys Twitter. Make sure you check him out at Joey Ikes. Joey, thank you for coming on. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm so excited for this. I'm so proud to be able to call you and Landon my friends and all the success that you guys have had. This is awesome to be here, and I'm just glad that I could, come try to fill Landon's really big shoes.
Yeah, his very big shoes. So I'll actually say this before we even get started. The very first podcast that I ever did was a podcast with you and Landon, like back in was it 2015? On the Blogging the Voice
or
podcast.
16, yeah.
I think because it was 2016 because we were talking about Jalen Ramsey versus Ezekiel Elliott. I remember this specifically. So, the good old days.
Yeah, indeed.
So we're going to talk today about some winners and losers from Cowboys camp so far. We've had 6 or 7 practices under their belt so far. Let's be positive, Joey, because you and I are both very positive people.
Oh, all day, every day. Yes, definitely. Only optimism about this team.
Only optimism, yes. I want to start with Tyron Smith. I actually think he's probably the biggest winner of camp so far. He's healthy. He's dominating. What have you seen from Tyron so far in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to Tyron. And I think the biggest winner of the whole thing when it comes to that subject is just, I think, everybody's peace of mind about the situation because, when you deal with neck injuries and back injuries like he has, you just literally, you never know what you're going to be dealing with or what's going to be going on. And so for him to be able to show up and not only to show up to camp and, say he's in great shape and all that kind of stuff, but be able to be on the field all through the spring and now into the summer with what really feels like no restrictions or anything like that. And, to show that you're still the same level of player that you were, that just sort of eases everybody's mind and makes everybody feel a lot better about the situation for sure.
I mean, that's the biggest news story out of Dallas outside of Dak Prescott, right? Like Tyron being back to what we saw in 2014, 2015, 2016, like that level of health is just fantastic news for the Cowboys. All right, give me another winner that you've seen so far from training camp.
I think it has to be Trevon Diggs. I mean, all the reports are positive. He's making plays every day in camp, and you see him, you see our friend Yuma out there at camp posting videos, which we're so grateful for, for those of us who can't make it out to California. So we're so grateful for that, and to see him, using really, really advanced technique, feints in his press coverage, things like that, just to throw receivers off timing. And just he's always going to be a guy who makes plays on the ball. We know Jerry Jones loves that. He's told us about how he's a wide receiver playing cornerback, and Dan Quinn likes it because he catches it and you can't hear it and all those sorts of things. So I think Trevon is positioned to take the step to be, to take a step up in tier, provide more consistency and be able to be the type of cornerback that helps a defense win games for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if the Cowboys defense is going to improve, they're going to need guys like Trevon Diggs to step up. And, I mean, everything that we've seen so far, it seems like there's going to be no sophomore slump. It seems like he's going to be even better. I think this scheme was like, made specifically for him, right? Like a long athletic cornerback who likes to get physical. It's not a surprise that he's having a great camp. We just hope it translates into the season. I want to talk about CeeDee Lamb really quickly because I don't think he's surprised us at all. Like when he came out of Oklahoma, we knew that he was a special talent. But for him to be as consistently good as he's been so far in camp, it basically looked like a number one receiver, with not only winning with the ball in the air, winning with separation. We haven't even really seen him win after the catch yet, which is, I think, his best trait. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen from CeeDee Lamb so far in camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the number he's wearing on his jersey is really fitting for these types of situations. We all remember, Dez doing Dez things, and now we have CD doing CD things. Almost every single day, there's some ridiculous highlight, unbelievable catch. Mm-hmm. But from reports of the guys that are there, and seeing on a snap by snap, drill by drill basis, it's not just one or two highlights per day. He's very consistently just showing up as a guy who's going to be potentially the most productive receiver on the team, and really going to be a weapon for the offense in providing teams with just another question to answer in terms of how they solve this offense, and quickly realizing hopefully that there's really not a way to do that.
So what do you think CeeDee Lamb's ceiling is in this offense? Because I don't think this is going to be a team that just force feeds the ball to one receiver because they have so many other talented players. But do you think he's got the potential to be a top, let's say, 7 or 8 receiver in the league eventually?
Oh, eventually, absolutely. Because I think eventually he's going to be the guy. Right now, and Amari's still super young. You know how old he is, a lot better than I do. But
he's 27 now.
Yeah. So he's still got 3 or 4 years left, but eventually CD's going to be the guy, and he's going to be the primary weapon in the offense if he's not this year. And so even though he'll be topped out at something probably 1,100 or so yards this year, he'll have a chance to put up a lot of touchdowns, and he will. And so I think depending on how you judge your receivers, if you judge them based on like target volume or yards or anything,
he's never going to be there.
Yeah, he's not going to be that good. Just like Dez was never there in terms of pure target volume and stuff like that. He proved his level of play by the type of weapon he was in the red zone and stuff like that.
The efficiency.
Exactly. The efficiency, good words. He proved it with its efficiency. CD's going to be able to do the same thing, and he's going to make the highlight plays similarly to Dez, but in a little bit of a different style. And he will prove that he's that type of player, even if he doesn't have 180 targets a year and 140 catches and 1,400 yards or anything like that.
All right, let me rephrase this question too. If they both reach their ceilings in the NFL, who is higher, CeeDee Lamb's or Amari Cooper's?
Oh man, I think it's got to be CD, because I think CD can be the route runner that Amari is, but I don't know that Amari is the above the rim athlete, so to speak. He's not. That CD is, and I don't know. They're both good after the catch. They both are really good route runners. They both play inside and outside. They're both. I think that's what makes them so. That makes them play so well together. I think you said it yesterday with Dalton, was like they're almost the perfect complement.
They are
to play together, because they're almost interchangeable from a role standpoint. And then it's just whichever if a team's playing man coverage, it's whichever player is lucky enough to have the poor soul as the second corner on them.
We're going to talk about Amari Cooper in the loser section in just a second, and that one might be surprising to people, but I'll explain. But I want to tell you guys about Built Bar, the absolute best tasting protein bar out there. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate with amazing flavors. It's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next box at BuiltBar.com.
I'm Kevin Ostreicher, host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, and attention shoppers, we now have taste in the bread aisle, Dave's Killer Bread. That's right, an organic bread that doesn't need 3 spoonfuls of sriracha jam to delight your taste buds. Dave's Killer Bread is a 21-grain salute to the end of boring bread. a brand on a mission to make the most of every loaf, to rid the world of GMOs and artificial ingredients, and plant the seeds of good in all that they bake. But Dave's Killer Bread has done more than raise the bar on bread. In fact, Dave's Killer Bread was built on the belief that second chances can change lives when its founder Dave, the guy with a guitar you see on every loaf, returned to the family bakery after 15 years in prison. Dave took that chance and ended up creating what would become the country's #1 organic bread, while never forgetting his not-so-easy path. That's why at Dave's Killer Bread, they proudly practice second chance employment, hiring the best person for the job, regardless of criminal background. And by the taste of it, things have worked out rather well. Dave's Killer Bread, bread amplified.
All right, I want to talk about some losers for a second. I mentioned Amari Cooper. I actually don't think that he's been a big loser in the sense because he hasn't practiced and he's been on PUP. That's not the reason why I'm calling him a loser. It's actually because of CeeDee Lamb, which we just talked about, right? Like, I think it's pretty clear to everybody that CeeDee Lamb is going to be a wide receiver, let's say a quote-unquote wide receiver one in the NFL. And Amari, again, love him. One of my favorite players in the league. But if CeeDee's your wide receiver one, do you have to pay a wide receiver two $20 million a year? You know, I'm a guy that would pay all the receivers. So I'm probably the wrong person to talk about this. But I just wonder if the Cowboys will see after this season, hey, CeeDee Lamb, he's dominating in camp. He's developing a rapport with Dak Prescott. Maybe we don't need to pay Amari Cooper $20 million. Maybe we're good, bringing back Michael Gallup at 12, 14 million and saving that cash elsewhere. Do you agree with my assessment that a Cooper is a loser because CeeDee is dominating so much in camp?
I think from a long-term perspective, a multi-year perspective, maybe, because like you said, it's going to push the question into Stephen Jones's mind of, hey, can I save this money and use it, somewhere else? Can I use it for my Bahamas vacation?
Here's an option too. Like, let's say Gallup wants $12 million a year, right? And Dalton Schultz wants $5 million a year. Does it make more sense to bring back Dalton Schultz and Michael Gallup for the price of Amari Cooper next year? I don't know, but maybe Stephen Jones thinks, hey, we can get two players for the price of one that, these guys are maybe a little healthier, more reliable. I could see that happening.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely something that we could see Steven do for sure. I think from a short-term view, I think there's going to be plenty of offense to go around for this year. And then it's just a matter of whether Stephen Jones decides that he wants to reallocate that money somewhere else after the season, which from this point in Amari's career on, as long as he's with the Cowboys, we're going to have that conversation every offseason because of the structure of his contract makes it so easy to get out of.
Again, Amari Cooper's one of my favorite players in the league. He's going to be fine. I'm not worried about him starting on PUP, opening camp. He'll be ready for week one. He's dealing with plantar fasciitis, but this is something that he's been dealing with all the way back at Alabama when he was the best receiver in the nation. So I'm not concerned. My next loser, first of all, Joey, how is your shoulder? Because you might be the Cowboys' backup quarterback this year. That's how bad the quarterback situation is right now.
My right shoulder's a little twingy, so I don't know. I threw a lot of baseballs in my time, so I don't know if
that's all right. You're still fine because the backup quarterback situation in Dallas, not great. I don't think any of those guys have stood out. Are you concerned about the backup quarterback situation?
No, to be honest with you, because and I'll harken back to a quote that, like I said, Dalton harkened back to yesterday, and you guys use often. Is the famous Tom Moore "We don't practice being effed" quote, and it's just everybody uses that quote because it's so perfect, and that if you have a quarterback. And Tom Moore was referring to Peyton Manning. But if you have a quarterback at the level that Dak Prescott plays at, the difference between that quarterback and any other quarterback in the world is going to be so drastic that your team is just going to be in a world of hurt if they're not playing. And so the test case has proven out in Dallas several times, whether it's Kyle Orton going from being a starting quarterback to taking money to come to Dallas. And, hey, we have this backup quarterback. If we need him to win one game, he'll win one game for us when Tony Romo's out, and Tony can come back and we'll keep going. And that didn't work. And, Brandon, over and over and over again, they paid money to these backup quarterbacks with the goal of, hey, this guy could keep the ship going. And of all of those times, the only time that anything like that has happened was going on 11 years ago or 12 years ago now in 2010, whenever John Kitna went something like 5-5 or something like that as the starting quarterback after Tony Romo broke his collarbone.
Well,
and so
the thing is, if you look at that 2010 season, they got a lot of help from special teams and defense.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they scored a bunch of touchdowns in unconventional ways that season. Otherwise, it would be the same way, right? Like, John Kitna wasn't adding any value to your offense.
Yeah, and they got the interim coach bump that every team gets. You get the rah-rah, let's rally around this group because we know everything's going to change next year and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot at play that year for sure. But the moral of the story is backup quarterbacks – I mean, their number one function is to help the quarterback prepare during the week before the game. Yes. And their number two function is to make sure that you can get through practice. And now we can argue whether they're fulfilling that function right now. But going out and spending money on a veteran guy right now, it does you no good, because if Dak's going to be back in plenty of time. I mean, he was out there having a scramble day at practice yesterday, just running around, being goofy, jumping around, all that kind of stuff, doing Jordan poses over pylons and stuff. Yeah. But he's going to be fine. He's going to be back way before week 1. And so if he misses a couple of games, Garrett Gilbert has proven he can go out there and he can do enough. It'll be unorthodox, and there will be more third down scrambles for first downs and things like that, because the defense shows him something he's not ready for. But you're not going to get much better quarterback play from a quarterback 2 than what you got from Garrett Gilbert last year against Pittsburgh. I mean, and we saw, like I said, we paid a ton of money to Andy Dalton, and he didn't play any better than Garrett Gilbert did. So.
Yeah, I'm going to pick on our guy, Mike Fisher, who is a big fan of this podcast, who actually posts these on his website. Yeah. He wants the Cowboys to go out and get Nick Foles and Blake Bortles. I just don't see it. I mean, I agree. I do think there's a point where if your quarterbacks are bad enough, they can ruin practice, but you're not going to go out and give away an asset for a quarterback to help you get through practice. It's just not the way it is. Heck, you can have Kellen Moore do that if you need to, right?
Right. Or even you could go call Mike McCarthy's buddy Brent Hundley or something like that, who could come in and for a veteran minimum contract, which is literally no money in the preseason, he could help you get through practice. Between him and Garrett Gilbert, you could get through practice just fine.
Right. I just don't think any quarterback that's out there that's available, even as a quarterback 2 on a different roster, is going to help you win games if Dak is out, because this team is built around, hey, we've got to score 30 plus points a game to have a chance. There's no quarterback out there that's going to do that at a consistent enough level. Exactly. Let's get to some other losers. I'm just going to say Jalen Smith, and the floor is yours, Joey. Go ahead.
I think Jalen's a loser. For a lot of reasons. I mean, there's the video floating around from Sean Sharif of Jalen's inability to handle the blocking sled, which was, that's a drill that you go watch a high school or a middle school football practice, and you see linebackers doing that precise, exact, lock out and move and sort of take on the block and go find the ball carrier drill. And for some reason the other day, Jalen Smith just could not execute that drill properly. And then there's just the linebacker depth chart and how well Micah Parsons is playing, combined with how well Leighton Vander Esch seems to be playing and how good he looks. Combined with the fact that Keanu Neal is one of the defense coordinator's favorite people in the world and favorite football players in the world. And there's just a whole lot of things that just spell a lot of time on the sideline for Jalen Smith and an inability to get on the field. And when he's on the field, Jalen Smith is just, he basically runs on one foot right now. And since that injury, he just looks like he's lumbering around the field everywhere he goes.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is like you can tell that he's just not the same athlete as everybody else, right? Like Keanu Neal, Michael Parsons, even Leighton Vander Esch, after he's, kind of reworked some of the hip issues that he's had. Those guys are all just different players in space. And Jalen is the one guy that just can't play in space. And in this defense, where you're going to be covering a lot. You're going to be responsible to cover a lot of ground. I just don't see it. It seems like he's a poor fit in the defense altogether. We've got some reports that, maybe he's going to be used as this designated pass rusher. I don't see that either. I think he's wildly overrated as a pass rusher. I think that's just a way to give him snaps at a position that he won't see on game day. I just think it's pretty clear you can't have him be a full-time guy anymore. I know you're paying him whatever it is. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I just think that he has this tendency to play super wide, which takes away his ability to change direction. And I did notice on one video where he was out, somebody motioned out, so he wound up over the top of a guy, sort of in an overhang position, and he sort of started in his big wide position. It was almost like they're trying to coach that stance out of him, because you saw him start like that and then bring his feet inside and sort of narrow his stance to try to give himself a chance. But like I said, he just doesn't fit from a style standpoint with the rest of these linebackers. And the funny part about it is, you think about a guy of his style and you think like, okay, what's the top end ceiling of a guy that plays with that sort of style? And it's somebody probably like Dante Hightower or somebody like that, who just runs around with this gigantic body and just throws himself into blockers and destroys plays and things like that.
Hightower can cover though.
I was going to say, but he can cover, and he actually knows how to take on a block. I'm sure he doesn't get defeated by blocking dummies very often at training camp either. So the things that Jalen is supposed to be good at, that should give him a role, he's not good enough at to be better than any of the other linebackers on the team at. So he's in this terrible position, and the coaching staff's in a little bit of a bad position too, because the front office's infatuation with him has kept him on the roster at this salary number that they're going to want to emphasize putting him on the field, and all the branding stuff and stuff like that, they're going to want him on the field too, and so they're going to be in a really tough spot with that, and their decision on him this coming offseason will tell a lot about the current state and future state of the franchise for sure.
Yeah, so we've heard some whispers already this year that the front office and coaching staff, it's one of their biggest disagreements is how to use Jalen Smith, because I don't think he's a fit in Dan Quinn's defense. The front office has given him a ton of money. They want to see him on the field. The owner clearly loves him. And I mean, from a personality standpoint, there's nothing not to love about Jalen Smith, but he's just not a great fit in this defense. I would say, Joey, I think there's a couple teams out there that if you put Jalen on, I think he would make sense. Like a team that plays maybe a 3-4 where it's a little bit tighter formations and, he's coming downhill all the time. Listen, I'm going to bring out my Steelers, right? Like if he's the buck linebacker in that defense, basically taking over the Vince Williams role, I could see that. Like that makes a lot of sense. I could see him in Baltimore being in their defense, paired with Patrick Queen. But in this 4-3 Dan Quinn defense, I just don't see it. So any other winners or losers that you want to point out before we head out?
I think we've heard a lot of really good things about Neville Gallimore. We haven't necessarily seen him flash the same way we've seen like Randy Gregory flash or CeeDee Lamb flashes every day. But they've only had a couple of days in pads, and from what we sort of heard about yesterday's practice, it was a little bit on the boring side it was situational sort of standpoint. So there wasn't a whole lot of flash there. But the team, the coaching staff seems extremely confident in him, and every time you hear about the first team defense running out there, Neville Gallimore is one of them. And there's only a couple of players that's the case with. Him and Randy Gregory and Trevon Diggs are really the only ones who are really, really consistently every single snap with the ones that are out there. And so I think you have to say Neville. And if he's made a big step, that's a huge thing for this defense, considering the state of that defensive tackle room for sure.
That's a really good one. I'll give one more loser before we go. Chauncey Golston, he's been on PUP. I really thought he had a chance to come in and take like the third or fourth defensive end job, because they don't really have a lot of depth there. I mean, they're hoping Terrell Basham wins that spot. We'll see I know our guy, John Owning, Bradley and I, Dorrance Armstrong, but for a rookie to be on PUP and be missing all this valuable practice time, I would not be surprised if this is more of a redshirt year for Chauncey Golston. And that's unfortunate, because when you spend a third-round pick on a guy, a top 75 pick on a guy that's NFL ready, that maybe doesn't have a higher ceiling than some of the other guys drafted around him, you need that guy to play a lot during their rookie contract. So for him to be missing all this time, I think puts him in a bad spot. And then one more, Dalton Schultz. Like, Dalton Schultz has been, I think he's one of the biggest winners at camp, continuing this positive momentum from last season. It seems like he's just a really good fit with Dak Prescott. He gets open, he catches everything. He's pretty clearly the better blocker between him and Blake Jarwin. Yeah. I think Dalton Schultz is having a nice camp. But Joey, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. We're gonna have to make sure we have you on during the season. What do you say?
Absolutely, anytime, guys.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Joey at Joey Ikes. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. We will see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Have you ever listened to a podcast like this one and you wanted to bring up your own point or just chat with other people that are listening at the same time? Well, let me tell you about Spotify Green Room. This is the first social audio platform made just for sports fans. The app is free to download, and once you're in, you can talk with us, other fans, athletes, insiders in real time about your favorite sport or team. Download the app, currently available on iOS devices. Create a profile, link your Twitter, join one of the groups for the latest league updates, and then you'll see us there. Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports.